Hey, what's up out there? It's Dave Duford here at Final Expense Agent Mentor, where I help agents like you succeed in the final expense business as well as the insurance business in general. And I want to thank you so much for joining me today on the first live stream training we're having on final expense post-Christmas. I hope you guys had a fantastic Merry Christmas. We did two parents yesterday, grandparents' houses, I should say. Ate lots of food and enjoyed the general Christmas spirit. But alas, we're back to work, ready to get down to doing things successfully as the new year is approaching us. And I'm going to be doing a series of videos like this to help you sell more final expense, to prepare yourself to sell more final expense, especially as we get more into the new year. And as I wait for people to jump on here, I'm going to go ahead and post a couple of live stream links here so everybody can start jumping on and watching. So just give me 1 minute as I go ahead and click through these, and then we will get started. All right. There it is. There it is. Making sure everything loads perfectly. Looks good. Beautiful. Okay, so thanks again so much. So today's topic is going to be about handling the objections that come up when we sell final expense, but more so doing it well ahead of time. My father, for you guys that haven't heard, my father was a very successful chemical salesperson. He owned a small mom and pop. He went on his own in the mid-'80s, and within 20-25 years, he had a 250-plus person operation nationally, sold off to a large chemical conglomerate, and retired at the old age of 49. And one of the things he taught me early on that essentially all a sales presentation is the process of overcoming objections. Meaning that, whenever we meet with a prospect, we can always assume that they're going to have some questions. It's natural. We're humans. We're not going to just hand our cash over to just anybody. We have to validate if these people are credentialed, are trustworthy, and have a product that measurably benefits what our problem is. And so these are essentially, if you think of objections, more so along the lines as reasons that need to be satisfied before buying. What one can do to successfully design a presentation is to overcome those objections well in advance before they manifest down the line. Now, the traditional approach to selling in general, whether it's final expense or something else, is about pitching first and spending an inordinate amount of time answering objections. And the problem with this approach, it's very 1950s, it's very post-war, in a different environment where people were probably a little bit more trustworthy. Whereas now that whole concept of where we are culturally is flipped over. People are greatly untrustworthy. Salespeople like us are not trusted as a rule. That doesn't mean people won't trust you or that they'll even trust you more if you can overcome some of their concerns. But what you need to do because of that is re-engineer your approach to accommodate for these realities, for these cultural facts that we have to overcome. And the one thing that we cannot do is to go in and throw up a pitch on our prospects without taking the time and consideration of figuring out what it is that makes them tick and what it is and what questions they have that they need to have satisfied before we actually ask for their money. And so whereas the old style was do your pitch, I was reading some books over the weekend, and from some of these great sales trainers that sold traditional life insurance to white-collar environments. Their training was very similar. You're going to have to take an average of 5 or 6 no's before you hear the yes. Well, the inherent problem is what are those no's and why are they showing up? And a lot of the times it's because the agent hasn't taken the time to properly answer those questions through the process of selling. And many times people get stuck on an objection if it's not managed earlier on, and their mind goes back to this objection and they can't necessarily understand and hear what you're saying. And so there's a reason why it's intelligent to handle objections well ahead of time, because if you can help your client overcome these objections, then they're going to be more open to you wanting to buy from you. They're going to know that you've taken the time and consideration to feel them out, to understand what's important to them. And therefore, in return, just as a natural byproduct, they trust you more because you've taken the time, and I said this several times, but it's true. You've taken the time and consideration to think through what matters to this guy sitting across the table from me, not what matters to just me. And you're going to separate yourself and sell more policies because of it, and have better retention, better persistency, and that kind of thing. So, point is here, whenever you're doing any kind of sales, there's always going to be objections. And the smart salespeople recognizes that generally people follow the same thought patterns 80 to 90% of the time. What you're going to find is there's going to be no more than 3, maybe 5 top objections that somebody's going to have. So if we know this going into a standard sales presentation, the great thing when selling final expense is we can craft our sales presentation to knock out those objections before they're even manifested, before they are presented to us, and before the client spends all this time getting frustrated because this thing's not being handled and inherently loses trust in you being able to answer some of these concerns, even though they're not verbalized. Because a lot of time people just don't do that. That's the other problem. A lot of times people have problems telling you what their problems are. They don't want to offend you. They don't want to say something that might throw you into a fit and put them under pressure. And so we tell white lies to escape those problems. And so, again, if you understand ahead of time what those objections are, as we're going to talk about in just a second, you'll find, again, that connection is much better, and you're going to sell more policies because of it. So let's go ahead and jump into a few things. Hey, True Gemini 89, good morning. Your trainings are awesome. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy. We ain't stopping anytime soon, so you're going to see a lot more of this. So here's what we're going to talk about. By the way, if you got questions, if you're live, feel free to post a comment. I answer every comment. If you're not live and you'd like to post a question, feel free to on the YouTube video itself if you're watching a recording of it. And I'll be happy to answer that personally, no problem. So let's talk about what objections we hear selling final expense and how to craft a presentation to answer them before they ever come up, so that the sale, the close, is effortless. Another video, another topic, but definitely related to this process. So the first one, and I'm going to go through all of them. I think what I would experience 95% of the time or greater. No need. You present something to them, they just can't see why they need it. No urgency or want. Maybe they do need it, but they can, feel like, this can wait. I'm not dying today or tomorrow. I can wait another day. Health is too bad. Oh, I've got diabetes or, a broken toe. Nobody will take me. No money. I'm broke. Can't handle that. $10 is too expensive for me, Mr. Duford. Don't bank draft. I ain't letting anybody in my bank account. I've been taken advantage of. I don't believe in banks. These are the kind of things that you're going to hear. And no trust, the big one. And we'll cover that last because I think that has a connection to the rest of this. Okay, so let's cover no need first. So I'm a big believer that when we're selling final expense, let me lower this camera down a little bit. When we're selling final expense, we have to find the need. Now, the other side of that coin is creating the need. A lot of people talk about, in general, in insurance, creating a need. And I think that concept holds merit, but not so much so in final expense. And here's why. You see, in final expense, we deal with people who are close to death. They're in their 60s or 70s or greater. Most of the time, they've retired. They're disabled, which implies that they've gone through health ailments enough to, hopefully, with that kind of experience, to consider their own mortality. And many of the people, because and by design of their age, have lived through other people passing away. Therefore, the concept of death is on their mind in the forefront. So there's no question here, as if there was somebody at my age who's busy living, busy growing, busy developing a business or a career. The last thing on their mind is death. And so in that case, you do have to, as the great gurus have always said, you have to picture for the prospect the hearse backed up to the back door, the front door of their home. Meaning you really have to sell how much they really need it if they're young. Whereas if they're old, there's two implications here. Number one, personal opinion here. Final expense is sold is bought, not sold. Why? Because the people, by the time they're in their 60s and 70s, having gone through all this stuff, are well aware of their mortality. And because they're poor, because they're on a fixed income, they're either disabled or retired, and chances are they've gone through death. So the inherency of the need is natural. And I profess that if you have to sell these people on needing this, there's a severe problem not with you, but with the prospect. A prospect that doesn't recognize they need life insurance in their 60s, 70s, even 80s, or are going to put it off, are living in a fantasy world. And you didn't create that fantasy world that they lived in. You had a chance to try to manipulate it to have them change their mind, but that is a very difficult process. We're not out to change hearts and minds in the final expense business. We're looking for people who are predisposed to wanting to protect their family, that love their family enough to take a part of their income for the remainder of their lives to protect against financial catastrophe for the people that they leave behind. These are concepts and thoughts that go through the minds of these prospects well in advance of our arrival. Our job is to massage that out, to expose that vulnerability they already have, not to create it. Again, I'm talking specifically about final expense prospects, not younger prospects who aren't at that point in life. So where I'm going with this is that need should be apparent. It is something that we ask by simple, open-ended questions. What were your thoughts and concerns when you sent this card back? So that's how one way we start to dig to see what the need is. Many times the buyers, the people who end up buying, say, I'm not getting any older. Not getting any younger. You are definitely getting older. And look, I've lost my spouse. I've lost somebody I loved. I saw how much it cost. It blew my mind. Talked to a guy last week. That's what he said, why he wanted to buy life insurance. He just gone through it, and he was shocked. And that shocked him awake. And that's what it takes with a lot of these people. Most salespeople are not going to be able to do that. I don't count on it. I might be able to do it every once in a while, but it's life experience that causes the purchase of final expense, albeit it's a life event type of process. So I'm looking for that. I'm asking questions like that. What would you want your policy to do for you? So these are the things that we're going to start investigating. What is making them tick? What kind of need do they really have? What are you doing right now for your current life insurance? That tells us, do they own insurance? And therefore, do they need it or not? Now, just because they own insurance doesn't mean if there's an opportunity there. Not always. Certainly not always. But if there's an opportunity to improve upon their coverage, I certainly will try to create a need then. That's the only time in final expense where we create needs. In general, is where they have inferior coverage of which they're happy with, but then we reveal to them other options they weren't exposed to that save them money, that get them more coverage, that ultimately benefit them. Okay, that's where there's creating the need, where maybe they didn't recognize that their policy was inferior, but at the end of the day, they already had the need anyway. We just brought that need out. Hey, we need more coverage for a better price or a better deal because I'm on a fixed income. So it's kind of creating a need, but it's not. Maybe I'm, drawing hairs here, or whatever I'm trying to say, splitting hairs. There we go. And but you get the concept. It's in most cases inherently there, and we ask questions open-ended early on to uncover them. We're not forcing them. Again, we're not pressuring people with a gun to their head saying, you got to answer this question the right way or I'm going to give you a hard time. These are honest questions of which I'm intrigued to know. I'm genuinely interested. And as they share this information with me, we begin to develop and create a case, or uncover a case for them to buy life insurance for final expenses. And we do this very early on. Now, kind of in the same breath with that, we have urgency, we have desire. So a lot of the times the need sprouts up urgency and desire naturally. Not always. Again, the younger the final expense prospect, the more that you're going to have to massage out the urgency and want. Again, the younger they are, especially in their younger 50s, this is why I don't like to mail 50-year-olds, generally speaking. I like late 50s and above, because a lot of those people still work. They've got group insurance through their employee, wherever they're employed, and they're satisfied with it because it doesn't cost them much of anything. Whereas, I got to come out $20 a month for $10,000 in coverage when I got $50,000 at work for $2 a week. It's hard for them to reconcile that stuff. And again, this is a mindset that's hard to overcome within this particular population of people, the final expense market. Doesn't mean you can't, but what I find in my own business is that with final expense, at least, because its design is to pay for a burial, and it's just true. I mean, I probably wouldn't buy a burial policy like what I sell simply because I'm 33. I've got another insurance policy that covers it. I'm just like, yeah, I see the desire for it, but I don't really need it. So I don't want it. And that's kind of how these people are too. Whereas I'm more interested in, instead of trying to cajole and convince younger people that aren't necessarily have the need there, thus not the urgency or want. Plus the premiums are smaller. I'd rather target the people who are more inclined to buy. Those are the people 9 out of 10 times that are already disabled, already retired, and by definition, being older, usually having health problems or experienced it through a loved one. So, because a lot of time, where I'm going with this, guys, is that you're fighting more of an uphill battle when you're trying to get somebody to want this stuff. Now, we're going to do things that will inspire want by answering some of the questions earlier. We can get you whatever price that you're comfortable with. The price doesn't go, we can tell them all the benefits and features. And these are things that will inspire them to buy too. But what I'm looking for here early on are words and experiences and stories they share with me when I ask these same questions. What were your thoughts, concerns? Why do you feel it's important to have life insurance? What are you doing right now for life insurance? Have you gone through the cost of a funeral? What was your experience? These are very open-ended questions that bring out emotions. And again, that's what we're trying to do. And by asking those questions, people have the desire for protection kind of tangentially, because they tell you these stories of woe, of pain, of suffering, and the revelation of their own mortality. So it happens automatically through these questions. I don't have to, pin them down on this stuff. At least that's not my style. Okay, so let me see if there's any questions here. We'll keep going here. All right, we'll just keep it on. So next question here is, there's no urgency or want. So I'm sorry, we just covered that. Health is too bad. This is easy. So it's kind of these rest of these questions are easy till we get to the very end. Look, a lot of people think I got diabetes, nobody will cover me. I just got out of the hospital, nobody will cover me. Well, look, one thing that we address in our sales presentation that I teach is from the first section, we're developing a little bit of rapport, but more importantly, we have to properly introduce ourselves. So an introduction is a scripted presentation of who you are, what you do, and why it matters to the prospect. And what this particular introduction answers is just the basic credibility issues, okay? Your name, your license, and what makes you different from all the junk mail that they get and advertisements they see and the other agents out there. It's very important you do this because final expense life insurance is a crowded, competitive market. You have to differentiate yourself, and you've got to tell these people, I am different because of X, Y, and Z, and this is important to you because of A, B, and C. So let me give you my introduction script that I give because it does an effective job of establishing myself as different but useful to the person I'm sitting across from if they inherently end up being a buyer. Here's what I say. My name is David Duford. I'm a licensed life insurance agent in the state of Tennessee, have been since 2011. And what I specialize in is the burial insurance, life insurance market. What that basically means is I help people get policies that are affordable to pay for the final expenses. And what makes me different is that I shop around to try to find the best price at the best coverage. Many people I see are on a fixed income, disabled or retired, and they want to get the best value for what they can afford. So bottom line, if you're looking for the best bang for your buck, I probably am going to be able to do that. Does that make sense? So that's my script. So I introduce who I am. I tell them I'm licensed since 2011. This is where you would hand your license over. I would laminate your license, usually get a little one and a big one, get the big one so they can see the stuff and it's not fine print. Then I'll go in to tell them I specialize in XYZ, burial life insurance, and tell them who I work with, fixed income seniors who are disabled, retired generally, or people I deal with. And what makes me different, again, I just use the phrases directly, is that I work with all sorts of carriers to shop around and find the best price and the best coverage. So if you're looking for the best value, that's something I can help you with. Does that make sense? So that tells the prospect exactly what makes me different, why they'd want to do business with me, and what sets me aside. And tells them, too, if that's what they want, they're going to be magnetically attracted to that. Now, if you're not a broker, if you're a captive agent, become a broker. But if you're not going to do that, that's fine. You can say something else entirely, okay? Let's say you work with a company named after an American president, and you say, hey, look, the reason I'm different is I work with a particular program that's designed to help you shop, not only get you quality life insurance, but also shop around the different funeral home programs I'll tell you about in a minute to get you the best price and coverage for your actual funeral. We can actually save you thousands of dollars on your life insurance, or thousands of dollars on your actual funeral bill through our unique program that we offer. So that way you don't have to spend all of your life insurance money necessarily on the funeral service. Does that make sense? So, and look, I'm not here to debate the efficacy of the program or not. That's not the purpose of that. But the point is you can take anything that actually is measurable and has value and create a value proposition, what we call a unique selling proposition, so that you can position yourself to your prospect in such a manner that they'll say, hey, I like what he's saying. Sounds like that would work for me. And this inherently, as we'll talk about in a minute, is going to build the trust factor and connect you and resonate more on the prospect. So moving down the list, no money objection. Okay, so in my presentation, I cover the no money objection probably within a 10, 15-minute mark. I know guys do it within 3 to 4 minutes. To me, that's like a little too quick. I'm not asking somebody to marry me after the first date kind of thing. So I kind of get into it, although I'm not saying it's wrong. Some of this is stylistic, guys. It's a sales presentation. It's not an exact science. It's as much of an art as it is science. However, you do want to qualify on budget. What I recommend agents to do is, this is what I learned from the legendary life insurance final expense agent named Tim Winders. He lives in Iowa or South Dakota. The guy wrote $400,000 in production in 2009 and then again in 2010. He actually did more than that each year. But just to give you an idea, a $200,000 producer is epic. This guy doubled that 2 years in a row. What he taught when I first got in this business was how to sell premium. So here's the concept. Selling, there's two different ways to sell. You sell a face amount. So for example, you show at the very end the 10, 15, and the 20, which one works best for you. Or earlier on in the presentation, you ask them, if I can qualify you for a program today, would somewhere between $80 and $100 a month work for you? Or you say something like Tim did, if you've got brass balls, and you say, can you afford $150 to $200 a month? Just don't give these poor people a heart attack when you say stuff like that. But it worked well for him. His average case size, I think, was $1,200 annualized, so about $90 to $100. It was crazy. But the average in final expense is closer to $50 a month, or $600 AP. So where I'm going with this, I sell premium, okay? And the reason I sell premium is because I can lock down early on if this prospect will say yes with 100% clarity and truthfulness and conviction that they, in fact, can afford X amount of dollars today, okay? And now I know all I need to do is meet their needs on face amount and then sell them on why my product's better than the competition, and I got the deal, okay? And here's the thing. What I found out in this business is I would much rather know if they've got a budget for this stuff ahead of time than waste another hour presenting to these people trying to object all their stupid objections when it just comes down to price. Because most of the time in final expense, since we're working with people on a fixed income, it's a pricing issue. I'd rather take care of this stuff earlier than later. So, and the great thing about the way I teach to sell premium is I start high and then work lower, okay? So, look, it's a lot easier to start high and then work lower than it is to start low and work high, because you may piss someone off and say, hey man, you said this is $20 and you're showing me something $100. What gives? Okay, so, but if I start higher and now I can lower it and get to an agreement a lot better, because a lot of people, obviously everybody who can afford 100 can afford 20, but you might cause some frustration if you say, yeah, 20 is great, and then here's $100 a month. I'd rather start not the resistance, but I'd rather broach the issue now versus later when it comes to what it's actually going to cost. So if I don't get if they say, I usually start 80 to 100, if they say no to me, then I go to 50, then I'll say, that's fine, not a problem. If I can qualify for another program, would it be feasible between $50 and $70 a month to take out a plan today? And then I work it down even $10 to $15 if I have to. Again, the purpose of doing this is I want them to say yes. And there's one last tip I'll give you here. there's only two answers you can give to the premium question. A resounding yes, or everything else is a no. So let me define what this means a little bit further. So a no is yeah, I think I can afford it. I might be able to can afford it. I can't afford it today. Come back in a month and I'll buy it then. Yeah, I can afford it, I think. Let me just talk to my wife. Or I don't really know for sure. Okay, all of these are no's. You have to think like that. Even though they're not all no answers, they're not yeses. So they're inverse of yes or no. So the way you object or rebuttal, like I'm not sure, because that's really what it is. Like, I like it, but I'm not sure. You just say, hey, look, when I hear somebody say that, when they're not 100% sure, that means they can't afford it. So let's look at it this way. So then I just bump down to the next price level. So let's just assume you can't do $800. I know you're saying maybe, but let's assume. If we can do something maybe 50 to 70, would that work for your budget? Yeah, that would work. That would work just fine. So you're saying that's 100% affordable for you, correct? Yes, definitely. So now we've sealed that up, and then we can proceed to the next part of the presentation. So hopefully that makes sense. That was a big aha moment for me. I've talked about this a lot in my training. I had a client where she said, yeah, I think I can afford this. And I took that as a yes. And I rebutted it at the end. And I was frustrated. I was training an agent. And it dawned on me talking to the guy that I never really got her to say yes. I got her to say maybe, which is a no. And that's why I didn't get the sale. Okay. Don't bank draft. Okay, so look, this is an objection you're going to have to handle. I handled this objection early on, right before the budget question. And I used to kind of like a backwards type approach to this, where I'd say, look, a lot of people we deal with are interested in discounts, and we can usually get you a better budget if you have a bank. Do you bank locally, or do you have a direct express card? And they'll say, yeah. Well, what I realize is people tell me yes, and I do a presentation for 15, 20 more minutes, and they tell me, no, I don't want you to bank draft. So I just broached the subject immediately. What I find is there's 3 different people with bank drafts. There's 10% of the population that hates it, never does it, usually has a good reason why they were scammed. 10% of the population that loves it, asks to do it, doesn't want to do it if it's any other way. And then there's the middle 80% that will do it or not do it based on who they're talking to and the kind of facts that they glean from the present situation. So I ask these people outright. I say, look, the way we handle payment is I don't come by the house like the old days to collect premiums. That's kind of the antiquated way. People just don't want people showing up all the time anyway these days, the way life is. So all the companies now require, and again, I put the impetus on the company. It's their decision, not mine. I'm not the bad guy. I'm just a messenger. The companies require you set up some sort of bank draft, or if you get your money on a card like Direct Express, they set up a payment. You don't need to pay me today. We usually set it up around your deposit date. I want to make sure, A, is that okay with you, and B, which one do you have, a bank account or Direct Express? So the reason I ask that is this is a yes-no question, because I just flat out want to know. I'm not going to assume this, because this is something you can't quite assume and then battle over. That's kind of like my approach to this. Again, I've experienced this long enough where I thought, well, maybe an hour and a half into it, didn't quite answer that question. They'll just give into it. Well, just handle it up front, because you'll waste more time doing it the other way than this way. And if look, they say no, then try them on a quarterly pay. Can you pay me today, cash money, 3 times the payment? Many times they can't, but many times they're just deadbeats and they don't care either way, and they're just trying to get rid of you. But the second question I asked there is about bank draft or Direct Express. Reason being, I see this a lot with my agents. Direct Express with some companies is a higher rate to do a Direct Express charge because there's credit card fees or debit card processing fees. So you got to calculate a different premium. Plus, you don't want to say, hey man, I can sell you this company. It's a surety. We can get you COPD, preferred coverage because you don't smoke. And then you find out they got a Direct Express card, and assuming they don't take Direct Express, I don't think they do. Well, now you got to let's see. Transamerica will do standard rates, non-smoker, but it's going to be $40 higher a month. So if you find out the stuff ahead of time, again, that's the idea. You don't want to create objections, you want to overcome them before they're manifested. Okay, so we've covered a lot of stuff here. Almost wrapping up here, man. This flies by fast. It's already been 30 minutes. So cover no need, no urgency, health, bank, budget. Last one is no trust. This is the big one. I believe this is the hinge upon which the door of success and final expense swings. It's not about rapport building. It's about trust building in this business, okay? And trust building is something that's not an event in the sales process. It's a continuum, okay? You're either adding to the trust or you're taking away from the trust with every word that you say, with every second that goes by. So by the time you get to the end and you ask for the money, you want your trust level to be, if you can think of it, on a continuum. You want it to be as high as possible at the end when you ask for the money. You ask for the personal information and you get it from them. And that gives you the best chance of success. So where I would say trust comes from, it's a very hard nut to crack, but it starts from the beginning. It's all about rapport to a certain extent. It's eye contact, it's a handshake, it's smiling, it's being happy, it's being enthusiastic, but it's also validating any claims that you make, showing your license when you introduce yourself, showing your family in the beginning too, so people know your family, man. That makes a big difference in a lot of these elderly people. Making sure you've got a scripted introduction that separates you from the other agents out there. To know your stuff when you're asking health questions. Do you have XYZ condition? When did you get it? How did you get it? Do you take these medications? What was that experience like? Like kind of asking questions like a pharmacist would or doctor would. They're not thinking, oh, this guy's trying to make me trust him. They're thinking inherently he knows what he's talking about. And the implication is I can trust this guy. Then you present what you're doing. Here's how my product compares to the competition. The stuff on TV, the stuff that comes in the mail, and here's what I do. And here's how it's different. Here's how you benefit because of it. And all the time here, you're showing your materials your competition does. And where in fine print it says there's a 2-year wait or it's term that cancels at 80. And look, you don't need to even don't believe anything I say. Just read this. I mean, how could they even not trust you? Because you're being straight up with them like that. These are powerful things and powerful ways to make a case and back it up with proof. To me, which is the pivotal element of selling final expense. Now, here's the thing. In most cases, you don't need to be this extreme, but why wouldn't you? It doesn't hurt you to be this diligent and detailed with your presentation, okay? You don't know who you're sitting across from the table. It may be the biggest skeptic on the face of the planet that would happily hand over his money to the right salesperson that actually exhibits care and concern for them. And so if you take these steps, there's no way you can even pull trust away from them unless these people have mental health issues. Maybe they've got a problem where they can't process what you're doing as being useful and beneficial and honest. But that's the exception to the rule, because the rule here is by taking these steps to do this, there is no reasonable or rational way that they could say that you are untrustworthy. Doesn't mean they'll buy from you. But if they are a buyer, man, is it going to give you a great chance to make a sale. So, and that thing goes up, 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 up. Or if you say stupid things, if you insult them, if you cause for them not to trust you, if your body language isn't strong, if you're not validating claims with proof, if you're not taking time to listen to them, to ask them open-ended questions, if you're not explaining what it is that you do and educating them, the trust level goes down. And by the time that you actually present what it is that you do, they'll doubt you. They'll lose that urgency. They'll wait till the next guy comes in, or they'll just say, let me think about it. Let me pray about it. Let me, talk to my pet rock. Some stupid objection. Those are the hardest to come over because they're just put off. So trust is something that is built throughout the presentation. You must be well aware of it. It is a factor of all sales, certainly in final expense. It usually doesn't take as much effort as I've described, but you should take the effort anyway, because you want that one shot at a sale with all the advantages and edges in your favor. Because if you don't have an edge or an advantage, that's the one shot you got. And you're either going to make the sale or you're not. Okay? And you have to think like that. I have to make the sale if it's there, or it's gone forever. And that's why this business, it is like that. It's a one-call closed business for that reason. And so you must take special care to make sure that you're managing all of those different aspects of the sales process. Well, that is it for today on final expense objection handling. Hopefully you can see how objections are real, they're manifested, and how to overcome these. Sure, there's a lot of other objections that I haven't covered. They're usually minority objections. They're usually issues that, are things that don't come up that often, so I don't spend much time covering the efficacy of adding them in. Certainly you could. There's no reason why you couldn't. But these are the big picture things that you'll want to cover ahead of time, and you can easily do. Hopefully you can see through the presentation. If you're interested in selling final expense, you'd like to talk to me personally, I would like to invite you to my website. It's feagentmentor.com. Check out my material, of course, on YouTube and my website. You can message me through feagentmentor.com/contact. If you'd like to join my Inner Circle program, there's a link below on the Final Expense Inner Circle program to describe how that works. I also have a book, and it's called The Official Guide to Selling Final Expense Insurance. You can find it on Amazon, or you can find it on my website if you'd prefer an ebook instead of a hard copy. If you got any questions, please leave them below. I'm more than happy at any time, anywhere to answer and help you out. My name is Dave Duford at Final Expense Agent Mentor, where I help agents like you sell final expense successfully. See you tomorrow. Bye.